Friends, Jeff, quick announcement. First, as you may know, we are releasing daily on the Around the Circle podcast channel. Early Access, Inside Story, The Morning Show, Rewired. These are all shows you can find all in one place. A dream of ours has been to elevate some great content daily for our hearts, to keep us from the trash out there, give our brains something to chew on that's fresh. All of that is big work for us, but this is secondary. For those of you who want to do real Enneagram work, most of our best resources are at aroundthecircle.org, where we're putting together online discussion groups, we're doing book studies, and we're doing a series of other things that allow us to connect with one another. You can learn about Enneagram from a podcast, but real transformation and use of the tool is going to require other people. So go sign up for a free membership. You'll get emails about what we're up to, access to a whole range of extra content. And alongside this, second, we are looking for folks. We're looking for folks to interview around stress and security and panels as we move into the future. Specifically, we need 2s, 3s, and 7s. And if you're interested, reach out to me on Instagram. Just search for the Around the Circle podcast on Instagram and send me a message. Or you can obviously sign up for a membership at aroundthecircle.org, and then you can just direct message me there and probably get preference. And lastly, our first book, Around the Circle, is up. It's only on Amazon.com and Audible. Hope you have a happy day. May all good things be yours. All right, this is Rewired. I'm Jeff Cook.
I'm Katie Whitlock.
Katie, we are in the last of the triads. We are entering the head triad. We're looking at Joey Schewee's book, When Working Together Doesn't Work, talking about processing center. 5s and 7s and processing. I think this is going to be a fantastic place for us to build on thoughts that we had with the 6s, and excited for our discussion. What you got in your mind to start us off?
I think what I have is that I think before I read these chapters, I would have said that I could probably easily come up with a definition of thinking processing. And as I was reading the chapters, I was realizing that it was harder than I thought to come up with a thinking processing definition. And maybe that's just true for like any processing center that's not your own. It's just hard for you to understand what's really going on. And so what ended up happening is that I defined in my head, as I was going through these chapters, I was kind of defining thinking processing as what it is not. So I was comparing it to feeling a lot. So, anyone who's listening, you might hear that in my language. Like, well, it's not this, right? So it must be this. We said this is feeling processing. So the opposite of that maybe belongs here. So that might come up a lot. In my language, at least. I don't know how you felt about that, but that's what was coming up. It's like the leftover stuff. It feels like, I don't know if it feels like that because this is the last one we're doing. Like if we'd done this and then feeling, I don't know how it would feel to me, but
I have in my head the idea of a processing center as a place you go to work. And so if I imagine the person who's going to work in their head, it's the disembodied head space. And that's actually quite helpful for me. And so I know that 5s commonly will express that in terms of their own self-understanding. I think for 7s and 9s, that could be helpful.
Yeah. I think the one thing it's going to be important for us to separate is not just rolling things over and over and over in your head, like overthinking, right? And because that's like 1, 2s, and 6s do that all the time, right? This kind of non-productive thinking where things just go in your head and you feel like it's all up in your brain, but it just never stops and you can't find a conclusion and that kind of thing. Like mental energy is what Joey says. She says mental energy is not the same thing as thinking processing. So I'm also going to want to make sure that we're staying away from those two things. Just like the nature of using your brain is not the same thing as being a thinking processor.
Yeah, let's go there for a second. Like, unpack that. I feel like part of our job is actually bringing a lot of definitions here, which aren't always as clean in the book. But when you think about the big idea here for thinking processing is what?
So I think of two things. And again, this has come from talking to 1, 2s, and 6s and realizing what they're not doing. So 2 things. One, I think part of thinking processing is being able to step back from a situation and see it for what it is. And I say that because when I talk to 1, 2s, and 6s, because you're present focused, you tell me over and over, the problem right in front of me feels so big that I can't see anything else. And I have to focus on this one problem. And I never hear that from 5, 7s, and 9s. So the first part of thinking processing, I think, is being able to step back and see the problem in its larger context. And I think this is all shooting from the hip, but I think the second part that's important of thinking processing is being able to get to multiple conclusions. I won't just say one, because I think ones can get to a conclusion pretty fast.
Yeah.
Being able to see the problem in its larger context, which means seeing that there are multiple good ways to solve this problem, and being able to think that through all the way to the end, I think is thinking processing. Because the other thing I hear from 1, 2s, and 6s is just the spinning, right? The spinning plates. I don't know how to solve this. It feels like it goes on forever. I'm stuck in my head, all the things. 5, 7, and 9s, I think, really value being able to get to the end of the plan. Finishing the thought. Those are my 2 things. What do you think about that?
I love the idea of multiple conclusions.
Yeah.
I think that's spot on. I think that 1s and 6s in particular, once they land on something that actually pings for them. Mm-hmm. I think 8s, when 8s hit something that actually pings for them, you're not moving those. Like, I have the thing. Now I can go forward. Mm-hmm. I have thought through this thing. Whereas saying the 5, 7, and 9 are able to see all of the things, hold them in tension, and do business with them, given their motive, I think would be really important at this point. They can deductively and analytically see the world and where trains of thoughts will go. Mm-hmm. And then motive kicks in. Mm-hmm. What do I want in this situation, given what I know? So often the connecting with the world can come into play there. I suppose I'm thinking about 9s now. Like being able to see multiple perspectives allows the 9 to exercise their motive and their gift and, bring the harmony that they often do. 5s are going to be doing different business there. You can see all the options. You can see all the ideas. What's going to keep me safest? I suppose 7s are going to be similar on that front. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to bring up ease here. Yep. Like you always talk about 5, 7, and 9s wanting ease, things to be easy. Mm-hmm. And if you want to find the easiest path, you have to be able to see multiple, right? Yeah, and that's what, like I'm thinking of my friend Natasha, who I interviewed on Early Access. And I think her story for this is so great. Like she's a 1 and I forget what happened. Something happened with the house where like, I don't know if it was like, the mortgage was going to be hard to pay that month or like something happened with the house. And she said she sees her lack of thinking because she came up with a plan, and the plan was to sell the house and move her whole family into a mobile trailer home. And and then they wouldn't have to pay a mortgage, and she could pull the kids out of school and they would all be fine and all the things like, and she says she was like, that's crazy. And the difference I want to say, if she was a thinking processor, what she really wanted to do was solve the problem. So she had the first solution that felt good to her and she ran with it. If she was a 5, 7, or 9, that is not an easy thing to do, to sell your house, move your entire family out into a trailer home. It's also not she would say it's like not a logical conclusion, right? It's just a conclusion. If you really, really value ease in your life as a 5, 7, or 9, you have to be able to step back and be like, whoa, okay, that's one way to solve the problem. What are the other ways, and which one is easiest, right? Because I don't want to do that one that feels hard. So that's what I see in these people, right? Is they have almost just like more time in between the stimulus and their reaction, Yeah. I don't really know if that's true now that I say that out loud, but that's what it feels like to me. And so when Joey says the other numbers, like 1, 2s, and 6s, get really emotional about their doing, That's what she means, is that you have a thought and now you're doing it. Whereas 5, 7, and 9s are not connected or don't feel I'll do whatever as long as it's what's easiest, right?
You said it, that minimizing what's immediate and the ability then to pivot towards what's easy. That's a great way to think about this. I always, not always, but commonly will have a difficult time with some of the 5s, 7s, and 9s in my life because they're not actually giving me what I want most in terms of either work or attention or investment. And this would, I imagine, be a huge part of that, is they're not going to relate to the world the way I do in terms of like an over emphasis on those things. What is the quick solution here? Stepping back for 5s and 9s, standing independent for 7s, living in that space. That makes a lot of sense. Bang, you want to get into this?
Sure.
Starting with 5s. Let's start with your quotes. I can read, you sent me a list of quotes. I have a couple that I wanted to bring up. But starting on 135, you have us tackling, this is again from Shewee's book. If you want to know what a 5 is thinking, you must ask questions that require more than a yes or no response. What you got there?
So I brought that up because I think, like we've said, we think just the one thing that Joey's missing in this book is what does it mean to be, right? What does it mean to be a thinking processor? What does it mean to be a feeling processor? Just like one sentence on that. And so because of that, we kind of have to parse out from her examples what she means by what does it mean to be a thinking processor. And I think that's why I brought this one up, because it says, if you want to know what a 5 is thinking, you must ask questions that require more than a yes or no response. So what that means is that thinking, processing, is more than yes or no. It has to be something that's happening in your brain that is more than just a yes or no response. Because what's implied in this sentence is that a yes or no response doesn't let you know what a 5 is thinking. So that must mean that thinking is more in depth than that, right? So something about thought processes, something about, like you said, or like I said, multiple conclusions, right? How we get somewhere, not just where we are, but how did you get there? That's what I got from this, is that when Joey's talking about thinking, she's talking about more than just the conclusion. It's how you got to the conclusion.
Yep.
So
what I read here, and this stuck out to me as well, is that the 5 is also aware of their limited resources. And if your question only requires yes or no, there's a limited resource there. But there's also something about how 5s connect with you. And there is an analysis taking place. And if your questions aren't interesting, that's not going to be a place they want to invest relationally. So if you're interesting, 5s will absolutely grab you.
Absolutely.
But that's what I suppose the connection piece is what I saw in this phrase.
Well, we say that 5s offer you information from behind a glass wall, just like 2s and 8s, right? So if you want to get behind that glass wall, like you said, you have to know how to ask the right questions that also aren't too personal, right?
There it is.
Not to paint the picture of like a frightened animal or whatever, because that's what I feel like the picture I'm painting is, and that's not what I mean.
I think you're on the right path. Like, I would want to build on that.
Go ahead.
Like, it seems to me it's not just that your answers need to be interesting, but that you need to be interesting.
Yeah. You
need to be someone who comes to the conversation they see and say, you are not boring at some levels. Like, it's not just what you say and what you are talking about, but you yourself. I see 5s having that gear, you know?
What I would say about that is that if your ideas are interesting, then you are interesting to a 5. Because I've had a 5 tell me, this is Sarah that I interviewed on Early Access. She says she just views herself as a head, as like a disembodied head, and all she is her thoughts. And so I imagine that 5s view the rest of us like that, just because we all view other people how we view ourselves. And so I think a 5 if your ideas are interesting, that means that you are interesting because that's what you are, right? I don't know if that's what you were saying, but I don't know if there's a difference between your ideas being interesting and you being interesting to a 5.
I think it's the case that for some, I'm shooting from my hip, but a lot of 5s who have that gear where they're therapists, where they're biographers, where they're academics, can look at a person who does things that are really interesting or has come from a background that they find fascinating. Nearly every person that my kid associates with now in Michigan is not from the United States. His entire friend group is foreign born, and he's fascinated by that. And I think there's something about that in terms
That's
of
fair.
An attraction, mental attraction.
I agree.
That's not yes or no thinking. That's like something to pull apart and hear about. And anyway, 136, Schewee is quoting someone who says, as a 5, I'm always thinking about a lot of things. Sometimes it could be the very thing being discussed. Outwardly, it might seem like I'm daydreaming or am not present in the conversation, but I am. I'm just in my head about it, thinking through scenarios and wondering about at least 15 things associated with the topic at hand. Multiple conclusions.
So the thing I brought up here is that this has almost like a wandering quality to me, like your thoughts are wandering. And as soon as that word occurred to me, I was like, oh, 9s and 7s do that too. People will tell 9s, you wander through your stories, right? If a 9 tells you a story, the joke is that a 9 will wander and blah, blah, blah. 7s wander everywhere, right? Yeah. Physically, mentally, all the things. And so I thought it would be interesting to bring up this quality of wandering through thought and maybe making that part of our definition of thinking. And now that we have that thing that I said at the beginning about the multiple conclusions, like maybe that's what it is, right? Is we're seeing 5, 7s and 9s go through all these multiple conclusions, and what that looks like to us is that their mind is wandering, right? Or the thoughts coming out of them are not so much for 5s, but maybe for 9s and 7s have this wandering quality, right? But maybe it's just because they see all of those things at the same time. So
yep. Love to bring in processing center here again. Notice the difference between what we said with 6s who are taking in the world through their head, but needing to do the work and business and activities in their relational center. Not how this is going to work for the 5 and 7, who are going to take the world in through their head and do business with the world in their head. And that's what I hear here. It's like, that's where that 5 can commonly, as you're quoting Sarah, just see themselves as a disembodied head, because so much of the work is being done there. Real similar to 4s who can see themselves exclusively as their inner heart, and like the emotional life is what's real. I think that can be perhaps similar for 5s. What the mental life is what's real.
Yeah, I agree. Everything that's what makes me feel good in the world is what's going on in my head, right? 5s don't need the emotional connection. Not to say they don't want it. That is not to say they don't want it, right? But to feel good in the world, they don't need it.
Yeah. Stepping back. Slight detachment. I would want to say that 5s have a lot more feelings than I think Joey wants to elevate, but certainly thinking about their emotional life would be one of the topics in their mental life that they might be doing business with.
Does she talk about feelings in this chapter with 5s? I forget.
I mean, it's just hinted at in terms of the disconnection from the center.
So that, we don't have to get into it, but that again is going to bring up your and I disagreement of, I totally agree 5s have a lot of feelings. I don't think that makes them, I don't think that puts them in the feeling center, right? Or touching the feeling center or whatever. But I totally agree. Again, Joey doesn't say this in the chapter, so I'm not saying she agrees with this or whatever. Anybody who teaches that 5s are like unfeeling robots who don't understand what you feel and don't understand what they feel and just would rather everybody shut off all their emotions forever does not understand 5s Like that's
Correct.
one, that's not a human person.
Correct.
You know, anybody who paints a picture of a 5 as a robot is doing a disservice to 5s. I would agree with you. So if you're ever, anyone who's listening, if you're ever listening to a podcast or reading a book and the vibe you're getting from the 5 chapter is that they're unfeeling.
Yep.
Bad chapter.
A good illustration for me is I just posted today my another interview with Sammy Greenberg, who is a doctor of psychotherapy, I believe that's her topic, but she's a sex therapist. She is focused on relationships as the topic she studies. She derives immense joy from connecting couples, and I suppose, I'm sure, individuals, to their relational life. And that's what she wants to think about. That's what she wants to elevate as primary in her field of study. Mm-hmm. And that strikes me as a great insight into how 5s would navigate those two centers. They are thinking about relationships. They are thinking about their emotions.
Sure.
Real simple. What I bet you Sam would say she struggles with is actually writing her dissertation. Sitting down and executing is the thing that's actually tricky.
Versus brainstorming the thesis.
Or even caring about emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, as you were saying, like, this is where the 5 in her job, coming to multiple conclusions, would be real similar to the 9, being able to see this is how this person comes to their sexual identity and passions and what they desire most in the connection with the person that they love. Mm-hmm. And notice how different this person is, and then being able to envision and imagine how the wiring works and how is it that we can break past some of the barriers here.
Yeah.
Expert and fantastic at her job doing that. And it comes so much out of her 5ness. And of all things, her partner, her co-worker in this is Enneagram 9 and real similar of being able to see everybody's different motivations and speak into them. Anyway.
I want to bring up the idea of like systems here. So I always talk about systems with 1s. Mm-hmm. In the sense that I say 1C in systems, and that's why little problems are big problems and all the things. But I want to bring up systems in a different way here. I really want to apply it especially to 5s and 7s, although, again, you could probably put 9s in here as well. 5s and 7s love dissecting things and understanding how they work and understanding how all the wires connect to each other and all the things. They don't always like to put it back together, especially a 7, right? But they love to take things apart and understand how they work. Apply that to philosophy, apply that to religion, apply that to people, apply that to someone's heart. You know what I mean? But the way that they are interacting with that thing is going to be very different than the way that a feeling processor would interact with that thing, right? Am I interacting with this relationship in a information way, as in what can I learn from it and how is it constructed and what does it mean? Thinking. Or feeling, am I interacting with this relationship in a way that forms a bond and lets me into your heart and makes us connected and things like that, right? So anybody can interact with a relationship or like humans or think that emotions are interesting. It's just going to be in the way that you interact with those things are going to be very different depending on your processing center.
It's a fantastic illustration of that. You could build N9's function that way as well.
Yeah.
TJ, when he started his shop, pulled apart, he got an old espresso machine like from 1982, pulled the entire thing apart, cleaned the entire thing out. It took him 2 months to put it back together while we were on the clock. Yeah. And the 1 and the 3 who are co-owners of the business are freaking out because the pieces are everywhere in our foyer. And he's just tinkering and but very analytic in terms of just knew exactly where these 382 parts, how they reassembled and came together.
How many 9s out there are engineers? Jace is an engineer, you know?
Yeah, you want to talk? Well, we could preempting it. Why is that? Why are so many nines engineers?
Oh, I guess engineering specifically is not what but just a job that like where you have to understand how things work together, right?
Yeah.
And putting things together and building things and all the things like that's engineering, right? So it does not surprise me at all that a lot of thinking processors find themselves in the school of engineering. You know, that's what that whole thing is.
What I heard when you said that is the 9 takes the world in through their body and intuitive center, very physical, and then wants to think about it. And if you were to put a topic to that, engineering's a great
that's a good
mashup of that, right?
It'd be really interesting. This is side topic. It'd be really interesting to go do like Enneagram surveys at colleges and within engineering, like the different types of engineering. You know, like are 7s more drawn to a specific kind or 9s more drawn to a specific kind of engineering? That would be super cool. My grandpa, who we think is a 9, is also an engineer. Speaking of, if you're a 9 and you're an engineer, comment below.
There's something to be said there. And pivoting back to the 5s, notice this. I mean, your dad ends up mastering a topic that gives him a lot of power. My kid is going into architecture for a very similar reason. Like I can envision this thing. And then when I execute, when I actually move into spaces where I'm building it, he wants to design stadiums. He wants to design very large structures. And just how much of that is in his head, putting it on paper. But then when execution happens and he's secure, he's going huge, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that would be real common with 5s in terms of like, what are you focused on? I suppose, or even this is perhaps too on the nose, but Dr. Greenberg, 5 studying sex, insecurity is going into that number.
Right.
That is
The
most
body
associated
center,
with lust.
Yeah. That's funny. That's interesting. I didn't put that together.
Jobs in, I talked to Schewee about this for a while, that the vocation that we go into is commonly associated with our security move. Like it's like we are picking jobs that we identify with. This is who I want to be, you know? Anyway.
Interesting.
Both you and Kelly are teachers. It's much more communal.
Right.
And it exercises that I'm on stage, but I'm doing it on behalf of everybody else.
Yeah.
And there's kind of the mix there.
Yeah. And I do this stuff versus corporate stuff because this feels more communal, you know?
A lot more money in this too. I also, she has a little side note on 5s and 9s. I find the 5-9 combination real interesting. I think 5s and 9s, and I think are the hardest to type between those two. They will generally tell you, but like if you were making guesses, I think 5s and 9s share the most characteristics.
2 and 6 are the hardest for me.
For you? That's interesting. Well, we could talk about common
that'd be a good
typing challenges at some point. 5s and 9s tend to present very similarly at work, while conversancy exists for the pairs who share a processing center and stance. Differing dominant centers color each type's reactions to lowered standards. And then she goes into all the pairings. She says, think of the connection between 8s and 3s, 2s and 6s, 5s and 9s as blended family familiarity. They may share a house, this processing center. Although you and I may want to change that. They may share a work environment. They may share
we would say their house is where they start, right?
Yeah. And so in fact, she calls it home base.
Yeah, right. I did think that was weird because actually that's super correct. She does call it home base. Yeah. So I think she just came up with this separate metaphor, like just for this one page. Right. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't repeat this whole home thing anywhere else. But that actually is a good point. It would be better to call it you share a workplace, but you come from different homes.
But they go back. Yeah, but then they go back. And that's what you said. But they come from different backgrounds.
Backgrounds,
she says. While nines shift to process with preferred thinking, they do not share the fast processing or impatience with illogical reasoning. That's the hallmark of fives. That might be. I know some nines that get impatient.
Do they tell you when they get impatient? Yeah.
No, they have a diary at their coffee shop that they pull out, and they write down the buffoonish activity of their customer.
Yep.
They have a burn book.
Super interesting. I didn't put this together. When I wrote down that quote to bring up, I didn't think about this, but Jace absolutely does get upset with illogical reasoning. He, at work, right, if one of his coworkers is doing something illogical, when I ask him when he gets, how often do you get angry and what sort of things make you angry as a 9? The first thing he'll bring up is if a coworker is, the first thing he'll bring up is if a coworker does something unfair or like not thinking of others. The second thing he'll bring up is if a person does something illogical. But he would never tell them. And you would never know unless you knew him, Mm-hmm. And so maybe the better thing to say here is, because I wrote this down as kind of this is how you can tell if someone starts in the head center or just processes in the head center, like 9s. So Joey's premise here is that 5s and 7s, she doesn't bring up 7s, but I'm going to put 7s here. 5s and 7s have a lot of impatience with illogical reasoning, whereas 9s and 5s and 7s, the fast processing with logical reasoning. And she's saying 9s don't have that impatience or the fast processing. And what I would say is I do think 9s have the impatience, but they don't tell you, and you can't tell. Like 5s and 7s will tell you, or a 7 will like laugh and move on, right? Like you will know if a 5 or 7 thinks you're being illogical. I don't think you'll know if a 9 thinks you're being illogical. So maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
It's not really if they are upset with you. It's if you know that they're upset with you. Right.
It would spin out of the center across all three if you're processing with your head and your target is ease and you have buffoons whose thinking is maladjusted.
Yeah, and like making it harder.
It confronts exactly that. It confronts the target you're aiming at.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, TJ is far less patient with bad thinking than I am.
Yeah, same. Well, maybe not same because I'm also impatient with bad thinking. But
TJ will mention it as kind of a, did you notice this? Mm-hmm. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is impatience. That's him stifling the rage at the person,
Jace will let somebody do it 17 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'll be like, it's annoying. And like, that's it.
I bet your ear is tuned now, however.
Yeah. Whereas,
what did you say?
Again, I'm thinking of 5s and 7s, and like I have a 5 friend and I have a 7 friend. And if you say something stupid,
yeah.
Again, I think Joey has a really good point. The judgers on the Enneagram versus the dismissers. So half the numbers judge you, half the numbers dismiss you. She would say 5s and 7s are dismissers. So they're not judging you, right? They're not going to stick around and be your friend and like talk about you behind your back. They just won't be your friend, right? They'll just be like, that was dumb, and like move on. And you can, and again, my father's a 5 too. If you say something stupid in front of him, argument denied, right? Immediately, argument denied. Well, if you're right, and it's like you just know that person, you can tell the reaction that they had.
You're an energy suck,
yeah,
or a waste, or you're gonna make me
or dumb,
unsafe.
Yeah. Just that was stupid.
That was stupid.
That's the feeling I get most of the time. Is that was dumb.
If they want to, 5s and 7s can cut you too.
Yeah.
Because they're so fast on the
well, and because they're dismissers, so they're not sticking around they're like, bye.
Yeah, that's what I suppose for me, that's what cutting looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
It looks like somebody hitting you relationally.
And not thinking. about it. Yeah.
And very likely attacking my intelligence.
Yeah, probably.
That would be the thing that hurts.
Are they attacking your,
on this front, if you're dumb.
Well, yeah, but
if they think I'm dumb.
I guess my point is 5s and 7s aren't going to come after you and be like, you stupid. They're just going to like be like, that person is dumb and not talk to you anymore. Yeah. Which does feel cutting. That feels cutting. But like the attack posture.
It depends on if they have a PhD from Oxford and are standing in front of a classroom and Jeff said something idiotic and they took the whole class off of topic.
That's a very good point. It was their class.
It's their class.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. That's a very good point. That's actually that's good to bring up. A 5 or 7 maybe wouldn't let you contaminate their thing with stupidity.
Contamination is apparently a big thing for these dismissers.
That's a good example, actually. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm not even going to tell you what I said because it's that bad. Do you want to talk about this section on 3s and 5s? She spent a lot of time on the 3s.
Sure. I don't remember what she said. Which section? Where are we looking?
Well, this is on 138. I found this interesting and was some of her, I mean, here would be the thing. Some of her thoughts about 3s are spread out throughout the book and not just in the 3 chapters. So I thought it would be fun to hear some other stuff on 3s here. But despite being a feeling dominant type and a thinking dominant type, the notable similarities between 3s and 5s are intriguing. Both types have the innate ability to disconnect from emotion, a trait that contributes to their presentation of level-headedness. Both generally carry an intuitive distaste for personality typing systems because neither type wants to be known intimately. I thought that might be a little overstated, but I want to come back to that, actually. The Enneagram pulls back the Oz curtains on 3s, which ultimately threaten their ability to succeed through image crafting. I think that could be pulled apart a little bit more. In the logical minds of 5s, the Enneagram categorizes human beings, something they see as fundamentally fallible, and I think that's correct. And then she proceeds. And a principal difference between 3s and 5s is their disconnection from anger. There's 2 big things that stand out to me here, but I would love to float it to you. What do you see there on the 3 side? Do you relate to this, or is there something to plus?
I agree with you. Some parts of this I would say maybe. The one thing I do immediately agree with is this, both types having the innate ability to disconnect from emotion, a trait that contributes to their presentation of level-headedness. And I'll give you an example. So my dad and I, 3 and a 5, ever since COVID, one of the maybe a little bit before that, but the summer of COVID when George Floyd was like, all those protests were happening and it was like super, super like political summer, right? Basically.
Yeah.
And so my dad and I would have these big debates on stuff, all over the spectrum. And that summer is not a good example, actually, that I bring it up because I would be like crying. But since then, we have one of the hallmarks of our relationship is like we will have debates like at the dinner table in front of everybody else. And to him and I, it's like, I don't want to say it's just nothing because I do feel very strongly about it and like very emotionally connected to it, but I don't get my feelings hurt by him. And he absolutely does not get his feelings hurt by me. Right. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because if you look at other people's faces at the table, they're incredibly uncomfortable because they think that we're fighting. Like the words. The 2 and the 9. The words that are coming out of our mouth, if we were not able to hear them from the other person, disconnected from the emotion that's connected to those words, it would hurt your feelings. But because my dad and I are both so good at only listening to what is being said and not how it's being said, we can have these big, to us, debates, to everyone else, fights, and like be fine afterwards. Right? Like we're fine. Sometimes I do have to be like, okay, are we good? And he's like, yeah, why wouldn't we be good? Right? But that's it. Like we never have to make up after it. So that is that is a thing where when I read that, I was like, for sure. Because he's the only person I can do that with. And my other 5 friend, I never worry about him. If I want to debate him on something, I never worry about hurting his feelings. I only worry about being seen as stupid. Right? So I do appreciate that about 5s.
And the thing on the background is your father in those moments loves the hell out of you.
Yeah.
And is filled with joy.
Yes.
And it may come across as I'm engaging this game at a high level with this person I care about, and look at where we can go. I'm not able to. I bet you he can't do that. He can't have those conversations at his workplace.
No.
I've
always said that I know my dad loves me and thinks I'm smart because he will debate me and like pick everything I have to say apart. Like a lot of times I will say, because my dad's a 5, like he kind of wins. He usually kind of wins those conversations because he knows more than I do. But the fact that he will engage with me on them and genuinely try to understand where I'm coming from and like give me enough energy to pick what I'm saying apart, that is one of the clearest indications to me that he loves me. Because I have seen people he does not value and thinks that they're dumb. He's like, I'm not arguing this with you. Right?
Yep.
Like, I'm not engaging with you. So the fact that he is willing to engage me over and over and over again in these things does feel like love to me for sure.
Pushing against some of the 3 claim here. 3s obviously can image craft. In that conversation with your dad, you are not putting forth a presentation. You want him to think you're smart. And you want to execute at a level
that is
where...
the presentation, but yeah.
Well, are you sure? I mean...
Well, I guess what do you mean? What's the difference in those 2 things of what you're saying?
My assumption is that when you are actually engaging him, you're not thinking, how do I come across as smart?
I am thinking that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You are not pushing into it saying to yourself, like you actually want to make authentic, wise calls.
No,
about the topic
I do
at hand?
tailor it a little bit to be a little more logical than I would normally be and a little more even keeled than I would like. So for sure. Yeah.
Fair. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
a little.
very
It's my dad, right? So hopefully not a lot. But I just don't think the rarity in which I have an interaction with anybody where I am not thinking at all about how I'm coming across to that person is like, that never happens. That happens like once a month or something. I don't know. I made that up, but whatever. Right. So, but it's lessened. I'd say maybe.
Well, let me pitch something then from an outside perspective. Katie, do you know how to throw a baseball?
Yes.
Do you know what it looks like when somebody throws a baseball real well? Like,
yeah.
The ball's coming at you and you catch it and you're like, oh, that person has an arm. I talk to a lot of people about Enneagram, and my intuitive sense oftentimes is how they're coming to the material. It's kind of like catching a ball that's coming at you. How fast what's the velocity feel like? Like I used to play baseball, and like sometimes like you can hear the whistle of the ball as it's coming at you, and it snaps in your glove. When you throw, the ball comes in very fast, and I routinely think people don't throw as fast as you throw. Yeah. You throw hard and you throw fast, and I can tell.
Thank you.
You know
that
what I mean?
Probably does come from my dad. Absolutely.
So I like what I read here is coping style. That's something that you share. It's something I share. We shut down our feelings in order to solve problems. So of course there's the world's on fire. There's an election. There's protests going on. How are we going to engage this? We're going to shut down our feelings, and we're going to be very direct about our thinking in an action-focused manner. That's not how the 2 and the 9 at the table are solving the George Floyd problem.
No. Yeah. I will say, And I say this neutrally because there are pros to it, absolutely, and there are, of course, cons to it. But I think you're right. Having a 5 for a parent trains you to be able to defend yourself with logic and not emotion. And if you have a healthy 5 parent, they will allow you to also bring emotion, but they will never allow you to not bring logic. Right. And I would say my dad is a healthy 5. He does not make me feel stupid when I cry. He does not tell me, shut up, argue what's real, and, facts don't care about your feelings. Like, he's never been that kind of guy. But if I have emotion, I also have to have logic behind it as well. Mm-hmm. So in order for him to engage me, right? He always cares about me, but to have a real debate with him, you have to have the facts. So I think that is true for sure. I've been trained.
It's a high value. I didn't have that. I really and in fact, today I'm highly intimidated by 5s because I didn't have enough connections with folks who really process in that light. I will never send my material to 5s for critique. Here's my book. You can look at it when it's finished, and I really don't want to hear what the 5 has to say.
They would have good stuff to say.
What's that?
They would have good stuff to say.
Right. It's all the 2s and 6s. You guys get my stuff first. Not since Moses came down from the mountain, Jeff Cook, have I heard such truth and wonders. Anyway, 5s will not give that to you.
No.
Big quote for me, and you may have this. No, you don't. 139. 5s are the only type on the Enneagram with no connection to the responsive center. I think this is really interesting. Mm-hmm. Responsive stance, that is. It's true. Mm-hmm. All 8 other types have a connection. 5s don't. If Enneagram understanding equips us to do nothing else, let it be that we stop expecting from others what they don't intuitively have to give. Okay. 5s don't have a connection to the responsive stance. So what does that mean for you? Like when you think about 5s and their processing?
I think it means 5s are the least susceptible to any type of peer pressure. Basically, like in real life, that's what that looks like, right? They do not pick up your feelings. They do not pick up your thoughts, and they do not pick up your action, right? They cannot be influenced to think, feel, or do anything different than what they already think, feel, or do. They will take in more information, right? But it's not you that changed their mind. It's the information that changed their mind. So that's what it seems like to me. If we say being responsive, let's pick 2s, for example, right? 2s are responsive feelers because if someone else has an emotion in front of them, the 2 grabs that emotion and collects it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what 5s are not doing. They can understand your emotion and they see it in you, but it's not theirs. They can understand what you're thinking and they see how you got there, but they're not on board. And they can see what you're doing and you can ask them to join, but they might not. And that's why I think that's why 5s get the bad stereotype of being a robot, is because we're so used to everybody else. Every single other person has at least one thing they can be influenced on, and 5s don't. 5s have nothing that they can be influenced on. They are their own person in every way possible. And to everyone else, that looks like they're being stubborn and intentionally against you and all the things. And they're not. That's just how they're hardwired. They're just not hardwired to pick up anything from you.
It's not a I'm right and you're wrong posture. Yeah. It's describe the difference there.
I think it's you're doing your thing and I'm doing mine. Mm. Why are you mad that I'm doing my thing? Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean,
What did you mean by what you said?
Page 140 for Schewee. Having a processing and support center and thinking and an ability to disconnect from emotion equips 5s to be the most objective and neutral type on the Enneagram. Hey, she's saying what you just said. Neutrality, I think, is what is another word for what you're describing there.
Yeah.
Why neutrality? Why is it that if you're in your head, you're processing with thinking, when you think about neutrality, is it just that you're not influenced by others' thinking and emotions and all the things? Or is it something more than that?
I think in this context, that's what I think of. Neutral is, it's very easy for you to separate the facts from people's emotions about the facts. That's what I hear from fives. What's really going on versus how do you feel about what's going on?
Yeah.
Fives are, I think, the most equipped to be able to pull those two things apart. Mm-hmm. I brought this up because I know how you feel about the word objective and applying the word objective to numbers. So Joey, all the time, her whole thing is that half the numbers are objective, half the numbers are subjective. And I know that you don't like that. So I was wondering how you felt about neutral. Like, what if instead of objective, we said neutral? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Can you sign off on that word?
To be honest, a real through line for me here was you talking through head types coming to multiple conclusions. Because what I see there is if you have the ability to see 7 different perspectives, in theory, it would allow you to name the biases at play. It would allow you to think through how is the truth claim being communicated by each of these different postures and philosophies when coming to statements of fact. Mm-hmm. Neutrality, I think, is helpful there because from that position, one can analyze and say, look, here is the framework by which Joe is saying this. Here is the framework from which Fred is saying this. Those are contradictions, but I can name the paradigm that Joe has. I can name the glasses that Fred has. And that allows for a neutrality that is non-committal.
Yeah. And how is that different than objective for you?
Because the 5 can't escape their own filter. They also have a bias when it comes to looking at Joe and Fred. Because Joe's an idiot, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
I can see why Joe came to that conclusion. I can be neutral about it. But here's the thing: I have opinions about red hats, and that colors how I'm coming to this. It'd be something like that.
Yeah.
Or there's a handful of 5s who I've debated about the Enneagram. They have standards by which they're judging the Enneagram that appear to them to be objective, but they're discounting, things that may be really important. So if objectivity just means the scientific method says, then okay. But that is long story short, embracing that the only truth can be known by the scientific method is not a scientific claim. That's a philosophical claim. And so if the only truth is scientifically validated, then your standard for embracing the scientific method is by definition invalidated because you can't get there through science. Yeah. Long story short, the biases that we come with affect what we think of as objective and non-objective.
I think that's a really good point. So maybe neutral is the word to use here versus this is a long road we don't have to go down, but just quickly, like so she has objective and then subjective. So if we put neutral in the thinking processing, what would you give to feeling processors or the responsive? Like, what's the opposite?
I loved your image there of multiple conclusions, minimizing what's immediate, not feeling compelled to make judgments. There may be a lot more motive that comes in. I just don't, I think that there's too much of us that is like, there's too much head in 2s, 1s, 4s, and 6s. And there's too much heart, in my view, in 5s, 7s, 9s, 8s. And she has 3s.
What does that mean?
That's her. That's her division.
Yeah, but what do you mean by too much heart?
I don't think 5s, 7s, 8s, 9s can escape the influence that their heart center has on them. And for her, that's the realm of subjectivity. But I think that I feel like my thoughts on this are a little too loose. And I feel like you and I have pushed into the spot, rightly so, where we need to get our definitions down to see what we're actually debating, because it can get a little loose here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think your language up front here was, it's fastballs. You need to throw in heat.
And thank you. Just off the dome, that was.
It shows your, see, it may be the case that you're trying to, what was the word? Image craft, but sure look like a pitcher that throws 95.
So here's my last thing I'll say about that, actually, as another aside.
Yeah.
I am being authentic right now, and I'm just saying what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
After I've said what I want to say, without coding it in any certain way, I do still hope that you think I'm smart and that you like me. And I hope people listening to this think, Katie Willock's really smart. She has good things to say. So maybe I can escape how I say something, but I can never escape hoping that it landed afterwards. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And being scared because I didn't code it in a certain way. So how do I know that it's going to land the way I wanted it to? Right. So I can never escape that part. I do think actually you are correct about I can give it free, and authentically and all the things, but I am still going to worry about it afterwards.
Well, 142. Schewee writes, if they don't know how to do something, 5s and 9s figure it out on their own. They would rather do their own research than take up valuable time by asking questions. This stood out to me as well. I thought that was insightful. What do you see there?
What I saw here is something really important that Joey teaches, which is boundaries, and which numbers have good boundaries and which numbers have, by good, I mean a lot of boundaries versus no boundaries. And she says there's two things that give you kind of inherent boundaries. One, being in the withdrawn stance. So being internally referenced gives you an inherent boundary between you and the world. And also being a thinking processor gives you an inherent boundary, because it's that stepping back, what's really going on here, right? That pulls you away from the world. So people will experience you as someone with kind of these boundaries, right? 5s have both of those things. Mm-hmm. And so what I saw here was that thinking processing is inherently solitary. To be a thinking processor, you have to remove yourself from what's happening, right? You are removing yourself from the people, you're removing yourself from the environment and kind of seeing what's really going on. Either removing or standing independently, again, for 7s. But that's what I saw here, is that her idea of boundaries and solitary and being able to stand on your own and not being affected by others. That's why I wanted to bring this part up, because I think that's an important part of her teaching as well, that maybe I just haven't found it in the book yet, but I don't know if she says that specifically anywhere in the book. So I thought that was important.
What I heard here, 5s and 9s, both the types that seem to be most concerned with their energy resources, and obviously they're withdrawn types. And just the overlap there of being able to research on their own means you don't have to worry about. I mean, emotional energy can be a real suck for said types. Interestingly, it seems to me 7s who are independent also have a lot of awareness of their energy, but likewise have a ton of it.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from their feeling repressed. They can also avoid other people at some level. So all 3 of these types finding their way.
I wonder, I do have one thing to debate in this sentence.
Yeah.
Can I bring it up?
Please.
So she says they would rather, 5s and 9s, if they don't know how to do something, they'd rather figure it out on their own. They would rather do their own research than take up valuable time by asking questions. Mm-hmm. And I want to debate the wording there. And I'm just asking this to the 5s and 9s that are listening, because to me as a 3, it would go faster if you would just ask the question. So it actually doesn't make sense to me to say we're taking up valuable time by asking questions. I'd rather just figure it out on my own. Because isn't it going to take you longer to figure it out on your own versus just ask somebody who already knows it and then do it? So that makes me think that it's not so much about taking up time versus spending social energy. You know what I mean?
As you're talking, I'm like, you're right to say, I think there's more going on here. Motive-wise, the 5 may not be asking questions because they want to appear competent.
Yeah.
And
5s value figuring things out for themselves. You know what I mean?
And a lot of times the learning style of the 5 is more observational in nature. Mm-hmm. And I suppose this would be not being connected to the responsive stance. It's the responsive stance that loves asking questions. Whereas just the posture of learning for the 5, I suppose that counts as their own research, as it were. But
yeah,
I think you're right in terms of your question is like, wouldn't this be more efficient? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like when you talk about time, again, maybe this is the disconnect. Maybe when other people talk about saving time, they're not talking about efficiency. Yeah. I don't know. But to me, if you have to go research something for 40 minutes because you don't know it, or you could just ask your boss, why wouldn't you just ask your boss? If your actual problem is taking up valuable time, why wouldn't you just go ask somebody? So I have heard from 5s and 9s, they will say, I don't want to waste time in the meeting, so I'm not going to ask a question. I'm just wondering if it's not actually about the time, it's about it's going to take connection from me.
Yeah.
And
it's about the energy.
It's about the energy. And I would rather spend this time, because I'm a thinking processor, I really like figuring things out on my own. So it doesn't feel like wasted time, right? To figure things out on my own. Like maybe that's what it's really about. But I just think the way that this is worded just doesn't make sense, you know? I think it's more than that.
I think that's a good clarifier. And I think that's on point. Okay, so she said something just to wrap up, which I imagine you saw this, but I thought it was hilarious because she wanted to talk about 8s for a second. Mm-hmm. And this showcases a lot of I think our posture towards the book and what I imagine her response would be. She writes this: even if an 8 is a socially dominant subtype, our energy is not spent in the exchange of ideas and theory. Debate for sport is both too steeped in thinking and too relational for 8s. We have no need for others to see something from our point of view, especially if the others in question are a stranger. But I laughed at that because I was like, oh, she's not coming on our podcast.
Yeah, right.
She ain't got time for this.
Right.
But it made me laugh in terms of actually just putting out there. This isn't in terms of an 8, perhaps this is why some of the things that we've brought up is, I really wish that there would be more definitions. I really wish there would be a little bit more clarity on some of these points. That's not the motive for her.
No. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that was great. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm also glad you brought that up because for anyone who doesn't have the book, she brought that up because she then compares that to 5s who love debate, she says. So she says a lot of 5s mistype as 8s because they think 8s just love conflict and like want to debate people all the time. And she's like, that's actually probably a 5. 5s love to debate. They love to, she says, more extroverted 5s love to poke the bear, where they just like in a crowd of people, like at Thanksgiving, they'll just like throw an unpopular opinion into the room and like watch everybody fight over it. From like an information point of view, right? Like I'm interested how everybody thinks about this. And I'm not responsive. I'm not connected enough to people's feelings to like, you know, feel responsible for how they feel about it. So I'll just throw it into the room and see what they think. So I actually thought that was a very interesting distinction that she brought up. 8s are past debate. Like when our conversation about maybe we were talking about renaming the processing center, and we did finally land on, no, we do like processing center. But I was like a little worried for a little bit because I was like, what if Joey hears that and is like upset that we, wanted to bring another name. And then I read that part that you just brought up and I was like, she doesn't care.
She didn't care.
She doesn't care. And like, I say that in a good way, in a freeing way. Like, she picked processing center because she likes processing center. She doesn't need us to agree on whether we like processing center, right? We can debate all we want. Mm-hmm. And I also don't mean that as like our debate is meaningless, right? I think our debate is very meaningful. It just doesn't affect her. And that's fine,
I'm curious if there's one blind spot here, and it has to do with whether or not the 8 feels, quote unquote, like political pressure. There are some 8s who I think do put their chest into the ring when it's the case that these buffoons are putting forth ideas that are going to hurt me or people I care about.
Sure. Yeah.
And that may not be debate for debate's sake.
Yeah. It's debate for protection's sake, I think.
Yeah.
Probably.
So like in dialogue with my uncle, with my child, one of my coworkers who didn't want to get vaccines, it's very much in that sphere. Mm-hmm. Like debate is not so much I'm looking for what's true. Debate is much more an extension of like I can push you back, or I can speak in a way that moves you.
Yeah.
I can speak in such a way that the culture moves. Something of that sort.
I imagine if an 8 felt like we were doing something that was harming the Enneagram, right? Mm-hmm. Like we were coming on here and just doing all this trendy Enneagram stuff. And if she felt like somehow, operating center was like fundamentally wrong and incorrect and going to harm what it means to engage with this idea, then I'm sure she would be interested in talking about it.
I would be curious. The posture probably wouldn't be, hey, I really want to bring up this topic.
No, it would be like, I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it would be.
Yeah.
And that's just it. It would be a declaration as opposed
and
to.
Again, that's not a debate, right?
Yes. I suppose that's right.
Right. Like that's not a like I've said before, when I do talk to Joey, and I really value all the conversations I've had with Joey, but I've never felt like I've debated her because she's just saying what she thinks. You know what I mean? She's not interested in like why I think what I think, right? And like the exchange of information and ideas. It's always just been me asking her questions about what she thinks. Which again, I want to be very clear, like that is valuable to me. That's not like bad or worse or whatever. But it's just different, right? Whereas my dad, I can debate my dad. It's just different.
As I'm running through my conversations, I have debated Joey, but it is much more declarative. Mm. It's also the case that I think she may be meeting me where I'm at. That may not be what she wants, but she came on my show and she'll serve. Yeah. It's also the case, speaking of fathers and how they influence us, her 9 father is also a philosopher. Mm-hmm. He has a background in that. And so that may be, especially in terms of if you're an 8 speaking to your father who's a 9 about things that matter, that may frame a little bit of how things go. Although I suppose she's saying she doesn't like debate, so I'll have to think on that one.
I think she's just saying debate doesn't interest her. Like she doesn't walk around hoping to get in a debate with somebody, There
it is.
But again, like you said, like she can meet you in debate if it's important to you.
On the morning show next Monday, we're talking about secondary centers, and part of it is I really want to talk about 8s and their relationship with their thinking, because I have an intuition that it's very similar to 1s in their relationship with their feeling. Also, you got quoted all over the place in our conversation yesterday as we were deconstructing the Siegel book. We spent literally 45 minutes talking about heart triad and having a broken relationship with their center. And we went around on that for a while in terms of whether or not the other 2 triads, whether head types have a broken relationship with their head and body types with their body, or is it the case that just everybody has a broken relationship with their heart center? And that's where I started to land. But
I would, speaking of debate, I would debate you on that, but
So it's got legs. It's something worth moving through, and and thinking on. Anyway, that's not about fives, but
That'd be interesting. I'd be interesting to hear what people said. And
there's some folks that are real thoughtful that are on there. It's worth. It's posted on Patreon. Hey friends, if you want to sign up for Patreon and get into the reading room, we are doing a deep dive into Dr. Siegel's fantastic book, Personality and Wholeness in Therapy, which is the most important scientific book on Enneagram that's been written to date. And we're doing deep dives into it. So you can find that on the Patreon. Last word on fives and how they process.
Here's my last word on fives. Fives love you by doing things for you because they have no line to responsiveness and because they have no line to the feeling center. I mean, fives are human, so they can meet you in feeling, right? But it is not hardwired into them. So if you are in a relationship with a five, I just encourage you to look around and see how often they do things for you and maybe invite that as them loving you, right? Because sometimes with a relationship, and if in a relationship with a five, you can feel like this person is not meeting me emotionally, right? But speaking of the hardwiring of fives and thinking processing and looking for security and all the things, that's what I just want to say that. Fives love you by taking care of you and doing things for you.
I think this is real interesting. We should push into this slightly, because you will experience this and you'll see your mom experience this with a five. I think fives long to observe, but don't want to be observed. Mm-hmm. It's the opposite of the heart triad that wants to be seen. The 2s, 3s, and 4s want to be seen. 5 doesn't want to be seen. Mm-hmm. And so I assume it's the case that fives are particularly talented at seeing the heart triad numbers and even speaking, as you're saying, like, here's what I see that is so, I don't know if they would say it's valuable, but I imagine like a 5 can give really meaningful compliments into that space.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good observation. If you want to be seen, marry an observer. Right? 2s and 5s end up together all the time.
But that's not what they want.
Yeah.
There's it's a bad illustration maybe, but I love the TV show Dexter, which is about a serial killer who kills serial killers, but he's a 5 and he knows he's a sociopath. Like, he knows that he like, the whole premise is in essence that he lacks emotion, as it were, but he knows what everybody in the world requires from somebody who would be healthy emotionally. Mm-hmm. And so he's just doling it out, but never needing to receive it. And that's my experience of my kid. My kid is really fast with texting us back.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. He knows that's my wife's love language, and he wants to meet her in that space, and he has the power to do so and is secure enough in himself.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now, but
no, I think that's great.
Kind of building on what you were saying there.
Yeah, I notice how often a 5 is paying attention to what you're saying and then implementing it, I guess, is what I would say. Mm-hmm. And because they're solitary thinkers, they're not going to like narrate that process to you, right? And they're not going to point out that they did it. You have to notice. But I notice that my dad all the time. I'll tell him something and he'll send me 5 emails about it over the next 3 weeks. Be like, hey, I talked to this person who's interested in that thing that you said you were interested in. Here's their phone number, like stuff like that. Like, my dad's doing that for me all the time. And it's based off of one sentence I said to him, right? So
it's not just multiple conclusions, but it's also like multiple browsers open. On this, like, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this.
Yeah.
And
it's like that wandering quality I was talking about, kind of all over.
But that's a great illustration of what I would want to say about 5s and how they connect. And you have to name it if you are in a relationship with 5. The way the 5 wants to love you is by giving. Here's the information that I know that I'm hoping you care about. Like if they're thoughtful, like so, and that can come across, like for some of us, that can come across as mansplaining, or it can come across as sometimes know-it-all. But what's actually taking place is actually a genuine desire for connecting with this, how they connect. Love it. All right. Well, next time we'll pick up 7s and maybe 9s. If you want to comment on this will post on Patreon. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm sure, Katie, would you like to hear feedback?
I would love to hear feedback.
From all the 5s?
From all the 5s.
And that's what I got.
Tee-hee.
Hey, guess what?
What?
She's Kate Whitlock, and she throws a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. You're the best.
You are.
Somebody told me that if you